Hello and welcome back to The Word Now. This is Pastor Mark Goody, ready to be with you for another session of End Times. So we're actually considering eschatology, aren't we? And we're ploughing through some of these events. I want to continue on in session number 48, to really consider the second part of the Great Tribulation. We've already spoken about the first part, and notably these two durations of time are quite different. We note that the first half, from the signing of the covenant to the desolation of abomination of Matthew 24:15, is characterized by, within the gates of Jerusalem, peace. Whereas the second half is characterized by terrible devastation, and that devastation takes the form of 21 noted cataclysmic events, which is really the outpouring of the wrath of God, as well as political events within Jerusalem. And beyond all of those particulars, we have the demonic activity, which is rampaging now, as certainly the devil himself and his kingdom know that their time is short, and they are doing all to create chaos and create a platform to resist the coming Christ. Even the devil believes the Bible, and he knows that Jesus Christ will come as he said. All right, so this is session 48, the second part. So if you remember, we left it with Matthew 24:15. What does it say? It says, when you therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet. So we remember that the person of the Antichrist, in his fury, goes into the Jewish temple, and notably into the Holy of Holies, understanding fully what this would mean in the mind and psyche of the Orthodox Jew, and he defiles it. And really, this notifies a great change in every aspect of the action now, not only in the Great Tribulation, but in the Antichrist himself. It seems that it's very possible that at this point he's possessed now fully by the devil. And he certainly becomes energized and angry, and he becomes an enemy of the Jews. He now begins to heavily persecute this Jewish nation that he has said he would protect and stand with. Okay, within this time, we see a couple of notable events. We see the work of the 144,000. So in Revelation chapter 7, we have those 12 tribes are noted. And it's interesting here, but these are Jews who have converted. And after all these millennia, we don't fully understand why at this time they now understand that Christ is Messiah. They've resisted it for so long. They had blindness in terms of their unbelief. But now this group of remnant in Revelation chapter 7 will receive Jesus Christ as Messiah. And this is notable. This is particularly in the second half of the tribulation, because not only will they get saved, but they will understand their place in the scheme of things, that they will know, number one, they have a purpose. And we know them as evangelists, that their purpose is to proclaim the gospel. But also they know they only have a short time, and they understand that Daniel's 70th week in its entirety is only 7 years. And they realize they only have 3.5 years left. So they know exactly where they are in the scheme of things. And they understand that they've been given a purpose. It says that, what does it say? Verse 10, Matthew 24, verse 10. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations. So it seems that these 144,000 will go really into all the world with the gospel of the kingdom. Now, this isn't the gospel that's been committed to the church. The gospel that's been committed to the church is the gospel of grace. But the gospel of the kingdom is to say that God is coming soon in judgment to establish his kingdom. God is coming in judgment. And lots of people here, they say, oh yes, the gospel of the kingdom has to be preached. And because they really don't have any idea of how to study the Bible, they take this point in eschatological time, which is Daniel's 70th week, and apply it to now. But they forget the main point is that the church isn't there during this time. They sort of forget that point. Number one, the church isn't there. Hello? Number two, the church has never been given the gospel of the kingdom to proclaim. We can't say that Christ is coming soon in judgment because we don't know exactly the time. And secondly, it's been given to us to proclaim the gospel of grace anyway in Acts 20:24. So these people that say, oh yes, the gospel of the kingdom has to be preached, and it's just another reflection of the impotence in terms of studying the Bible. All right, but anyway, it seems that these Jews, now don't forget, these Jews come from Jewish families. And this betrayal here, I suggest to you that this is a betrayal by their family members, notably maybe their parents, their brothers and sisters, who go with the lie of the Antichrist. They have enjoyed the peace within the walls of Jerusalem. And they now see even their sons and daughters as, they might call them, a terrorist threat against that peace, because they are going into all the world proclaiming that Jesus is Messiah, which is an outrage for the Orthodox Jew. And it's very possible that they, their fathers and mothers and their families will wash their hands of them and hand them over to the Antichrist authority. So what will the Antichrist do? The Antichrist will persecute them. During this second half of the tribulation, there will be great persecution, not just at the hands of the Antichrist. No doubt he will say, you've broken the covenant, you are a threat to security, and all these things. But it also seems that the Islamic and Arabic authorities will also jump in and say they have right also to act. And we read in Revelation 24, the souls of those that were beheaded during this time crying out. And we know that beheading, it's not, I've heard in the past that, they'll resurrect a guillotine and they'll cut off the heads of people. This is ridiculous. The reality is, we all know where the beheading comes from. This is exclusively an action of the Islamic religion. It's been the action for 30 years. We've seen precious Westerners like James Foley and all these different ones beheaded at the brutal hands of this man-made demonic religion. And it will be the same thing here. That beheading is that Islam is fully in sway, this fourth kingdom, in beheading these people. It's very sure that this is the application of that. We see that during that lack of security, and we have the Antichrist going into the temple, that the devil in his bid, or the Antichrist in his bid to enforce security, will give rise to this mark of the beast in Revelation 13, Revelation 16 as well, but Revelation 13, and it says, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, in Revelation 13:16. And this we must remember if we are to divide and rightly divide the word of God in 2 Timothy 2:15. This is during the tribulation. This is during Daniel's 70th week, at a time when the church is not on the earth. So all those that say, oh yes, the virus is the mark of the beast, and when you get the vaccine it's the mark of the beast. Again, this is just childish Christianity that has no idea. The mark of the beast is something that the church will never see. The mark of the beast is something that the Antichrist will impose during the time of Daniel's 70th week, when the church isn't here. And it seems that mark will be part of his strategy to stabilize and to control Jerusalem and Israel, the land of Israel. And of course we read that men cannot buy or sell without this mark, and we read that the Jewish evangelists go hungry part of their suffering of that time, apart from the weather and the environmental factors, is that they can't buy food and their own families have betrayed them. And so they're really going to suffer, and I no doubt they will also be rightly rewarded in Revelation chapter 20 for their place in the kingdom and their calling, that specific calling. So the main thrust of this second part of the Great Tribulation, the last 3.5 years, so it starts from the desolation in the temple to leading to the Battle of Armageddon, and we'll talk about that later, where the political armies of the world converge around Israel to destroy it. And really this is Satan's thrust, to bring in all of the support he can to challenge the oncoming Christ, and that will be that great battle of Armageddon, and in the midst of the battle, the sign of the Son of Man, and then the Parousia. So we'll speak about that next time. So the end of the second half of the Great Tribulation is the Battle of Armageddon. So particularly these last 3.5 years, we'll see these 21 judgments of God, the bowls, the trumpets, and the seals. And I won't go through them in detail. You can read them in Revelation chapter 6 to chapter 19. But basically, these are unprecedented weather events, from great meteors, notably wormwood and all the others, to amazing earthquakes and seismic activity, to the waters of the world drying up and that which is there becoming blood, to pestilences and diseases, and in fact, immense suffering that we cannot even measure. And, to the natural viewpoint, it's even hard to understand why God is allowing this. But we must remember that this particular time in God's scheme is following millennia, thousands of years of great patience in the hand of God. And not only great patience, but God himself would bring forth a plan to secure the redemption of man, that God would become a man, would die on a cross, would provide redemption through an atonement. He's done everything he can in Isaiah 5:4. Remember that verse, what more can I do for my vineyard that I haven't done? So this time is a time where God is justly pouring out his wrath. And also, don't forget that men can still turn to God during this time. It seems that their hearts are very closed by now. In 2 Thessalonians 2, they are, vehemently holding up their fists to God and shouting at him and cursing him. And we must also remember that the evil in the heart of man and the progression of man's rebellion is great at this time. It's, this is after thousands of years, and man has his own agenda of hate towards God. And really, you only see those two train tracks on the earth today. It's hard for us to understand, but the reality is there are only two camps. There are two train tracks. There are those that are in rebellion against God, rebelling against him in all outward ways. We can see it in the way they dress, in the words they use, in their value system, in the policies that they put into place if they're in governments. And those who submit to the living God and turn to Jesus Christ. And it must be remembered that even those in man-made religion, they're just as much on the rebellion scale as anyone else. They also have turned against the living God and rejected the salvation he's given. And don't forget, historically, they're the ones that have also persecuted the saints, whether it's Islam or Catholicism. They've thoroughly persecuted the saints. We see that even here towards the end, these beheadings and this great persecution of these 144,000. So we have the 7 trumpets, the grass burnt up. We have all these things. We have the angel of the pit coming out, these locusts coming forth, fire and smoke and brimstone. We see the 2 witnesses are killed here by the Antichrist in Revelation 11, and they are resurrected during this time and go to heaven. We see the activity of the beast in his rallying around of persecution and in his frantic demonic activity to raise up armies to confront the coming Christ. So what else do I want to say? We see the plagues. We see God's judgment on the great whore in Revelation 17. And these all leading to the coming Christ. But another beautiful thing is that we do see in Revelation 5:9 and 7:14. Let me just read you some of these verses. 5:9 says, "And they sung a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain, and thou hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation." And then 7:14 also says, "And I said unto thee, Sir, you knowest." And he said to me, "These are they which came out of great tribulation. They and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple. And he that sits on the throne shall dwell with them." So we see also at this time, notably, I'm sorry, it's like a zoo here. This is my dog. This is the chickens. I'm very sorry about that. Excuse me. Yeah. So that's the dog coming in. Anyway, let's finish this. We see notably at this time that many respond to the message of the 144,000, those evangelists, and we see many get saved. And this is a beautiful thing. Don't forget, God never removes his offer of salvation. Remember, in wrath there is mercy, and people can still be saved. Of course, they won't be delivered from the physical suffering. And that physical suffering during this last 3.5 years will result in 2/3 of the earth's population perishing. Remember, every country will have earthquakes and will have a lack of water, will have a lack of food, and so much physical suffering. So, this is quite a terrible time here. So I need to finish, I think. The dog has come in. I'm very sorry about that. So this is the second part of the tribulation. This is session 48 from the abomination of desolation, where the Antichrist goes into the Holy of Holies and defiles it. He then takes on his political activity of persecution against the Jews. The 144,000 are very active during this time. We see the outpouring of God's wrath in 21 notable judgments of the trumpets, the seals, and the vials. And this is all leading to the outward political activity of armies surrounding Jerusalem as the Euphrates is drying up in Revelation chapter 16. We see the activity of Islamic religion in their beheading. Of course, we can apply that to the Islamic religion. I think that's a very reasonable application. So really, what a time. And of course, we mustn't forget, for the Church of God, we are not there. The redeemed of the church age were removed in the rapture, the great harpazo, before the onset of this great tribulation. So this is a great thing. All right, so sorry about the zoo noises here. I wish I had a nice studio we could do our recording in, but I pretty much am doing it in a zoo at the minute. It doesn't matter. I think you can still understand. So God bless you. We're going to close now our session 48, and may I bid you Godspeed. May he be in your heart. May he lead you in his plan. And may the love of God fill you and empower you to share the good news of the gospel of grace. If we're still here, we still have a purpose, don't we? To make disciples and to share the gospel of grace. Okay? God bless you now. Thank you. This is Pastor Mark Goody signing out.